We are back with another live episode of Dynasty Theory, only at DD Fantasy Football. Guys, an exciting day. First day of legal tampering in the books. We had some news over the weekend that we're going to touch on, several things that happened today. And then if you go on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel, Mitch, you, Scott, Shane, Ray did a very nice job of going through and kind of hitting on the breaking news subjects and spending 10, 15 minutes discussing whether it's a dynasty perspective, a usage perspective, however you want to look at it. But a lot of good things there. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel at DD Fantasy Football. Hit that like button, and off we go, gentlemen. I see Sean in the chat. What's going on? So, like I said, a lot of things happening. First thing we're going to talk about tonight, Sam Darnold going to the Seattle Seahawks. As you can see on the screen, KTC value quarterback 25 coming into free agency. He gets 3 years, just over $100 million. Dan, I want to start with you. Before we even touch on Sam Darnold himself, how does this affect JSN's value for you? Everybody else, they're gone.
I see it going up. I think Seattle has a plan. I think people were panicking a little bit, like, what's Seattle doing? You got to love all the little Twitter posts with JSN being all lonely, no quarterback, no receiver mates. But guys, I mean, to me, I think they get a younger quarterback and a second-round draft pick, Seattle. They have a plan. I thought that was a win-win for the Raiders in Seattle. Raiders, I think they needed to get themselves a quarterback and stabilize. They did that. And I'm sure we'll get into Geno and the Raiders. But Sam, you get a younger quarterback coming off a great season. You acquire a second-round pick, and I think JSN becomes the focal point of this offense. This is day one of free agency. Like that's it. It's just day one. There are still wide receivers on the market. There's still a draft coming up, and there's opportunity to put some weapons around JSN. I think they're going to try to run the ball. I think this is good for Kenneth Walker and maybe Charbonnet there. But as far as the receiver position, I think that offense is what we probably hoped. It goes through JSN now versus him being a secondary weapon.
Mitch, how do you view Sam Darnold here going to Seattle and the difference between what Sam Darnold brings to the table versus what we saw from Geno Smith, but also pairing that with the fact that DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are both gone. And Dan, you did say it's the first day of free agency, legal tampering. Who knows if any other moves are going to happen? What if they choose to move on from Kenneth Walker? There is a lot of time for this to really take shape. So, Mitch, what are your thoughts overall here? You're on mute.
And he was busting me.
I sure was. Hey, so
it's every week.
It happens at least once. It's just a thing now. It's much the same with the Seahawks, and that's my biggest takeaway with Darnold going there compared to Geno going there. To me, this doesn't elevate Sam Darnold at all. It doesn't make me drop him at all. He is exactly where he was a week ago. I said it on a show earlier today that I believe the only way his value was going to go up is if he stayed with the Vikings. I don't think going to the Seahawks helps him a lot. The offensive line is worse than what the Vikings had. Skill position players are worse than what the Vikings had. Coaching's worse than what the Vikings had. So there's a lot of things against it, but this isn't me dogging on Darnold because I actually think it's a good spot. What the Seahawks did, it was a very good move football-wise. But Sam Darnold, and I hope they keep adding very good pieces to this offense. But just Sam Darnold with the only real legit pass catcher being JSN is a very scary thing. And I know that there's more people out there who could be signed. Maybe it's an Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper doesn't make me feel any better, right? Like they need to get an elite talent with them, and they just traded a really good talent away. I'm almost thinking this is more of a rebuild year for Seattle because there's probably 2 or 3 wide receivers that could come in the draft that would make me feel better. If they go out and I love Jalen Royals. Love Jalen Royals. They go out and select Jalen Royals. I'm like, the target share is there, but how good is this offense actually going to be?
I want to challenge you on a point that you made. You mentioned that Sam Darnold, his value It has not changed for you. It's where it was. It is not going up. It is not going down. You could have seen it going up if he remained in Minnesota. And I certainly think that part of it is a valid point. But getting a 3-year deal where he is, in fact, the unquestioned starter, I think it does elevate him from a market perspective, at least.
To what? Well, why are you raising him? That's the problem. Right now, he's 25. You taking him over Dak?
Now, let me
No,
say
no.
my I hold on. Let's leave Dak out of this for a minute. I had him in the tier below, so I actually did move him up because there was always that possibility that he either got franchise tagged, that maybe he got a 1-year, even further prove it deal. There were other opportunities and other scenarios, I might say, that Sam Darnold could have seen here.
So you moved him up to where everybody else had him, though. So yeah, there was a value adjustment for you, but I'm saying I already had him about that range, and he's right below, let's see, Sanders, Tua, Dak. He's not moving over them for me. Just, it's not going to happen.
I see a comment real quick before I turn it over to you, Dan. I see a comment from Taylor. Unquestioned starter for how long? I mean, well, at least, let's say bare minimum 2025. But let's say he were to remain in Minnesota on the tag or a 1-year deal. That leash would have been a heck of a lot shorter, having to fend off JJ McCarthy. So that's kind of my baseline and the way that I'm looking at it. But yeah, Taylor, with the way the NFL works, with how quickly teams move on and pull the plug on these players, he's going to have to perform. And Dan, I want to volley back over to you really quick, and then I know you have a few things to say. With what Mitch mentioned, Seattle, it's bare bones right now, right? We have the running backs, we have JSN. That's kind of it. Okay. Is there that excuse for Sam Darnold if he doesn't perform well and you see that they're sticking with him regardless? Isn't there that built-in excuse?
Too early. I mean,
too early. What?
To say there's an excuse like this again, it's day one of free agency. They could go sign a receiver. They could draft a receiver. They've got a good run game.
I'm saying as things stand today, Dan.
I mean, in the moment, if they didn't do anything else, yeah, hey, is there an excuse? He had no weapons. Sure. You know what I mean? That maybe it buys a little time to next year, and it goes to Mitch's point of it being a rebuild. I could see that. And I think you both make a lot of points. And for a lot of those points, I want to give you guys like a big first down and say, hey, you're moving the chains. And then there's a couple things I want to throw a penalty flag on, and say, hey, I'm not quite sure. Because like I agree with Mitch that he's not like moving up tiers. Like I don't think I see Scott on here looking at comparing him to Tua, Pete Penix, Bryce Young. I don't see him moving up there. So to Mitch's point, I don't see him moving up. But JB, where I think you do see him moving up is, hey, we were a little nervous going into today. Hey, is Sam Darnold going to have a starting job? Like he cemented a job. So Mitch, I would say like he does move up in the perspective of, hey, we know he landed. You've got yourself a quarterback that could get you by for a year or two in Superflex. But I think where it ultimately landed for me today is as this quarterback situation almost completely fleshed out after quarterback 26. It's the rest in Dynasty. I think it's the category and tier of Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Derek Carr, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson eventually, Aaron Rodgers eventually, that you're just waiting to the end of the draft. Maybe there's going to be some Fields people out there saying no way, and his rushing value might bump him up a little bit more. He stood alive. But I think these are the end of the quarterback tiers that unless something breaks, do you really want them in Dynasty? You'll take them if you need them. But you don't feel good about having them.
Follow-up question or comment from Taylor. That's the point of value, though. If we're already trying to give him excuses for why we wouldn't perform this year, are we starting him? You don't necessarily need to start him, depending on your roster construction. But
we would. But we've had rosters, all three of us, correct, that have had the Derek Carrs, those kind of guys last year. Maybe not by choice. Maybe it took an injury. Maybe it was, hey, bye week kind of plays. But we need them. We just don't want them.
And then I have confidence throwing Tua, Penix, and Bryce into my lineup. But I mean, that's the beauty of Dynasty, right? You don't always need to sit there and have the confidence in these players on your roster to inject them into your starting lineup from the get-go. the values and situations change. And that is something with Sam Darnold that I do think there's going to be a little bit of that value insulation. But for the most part, if his value rises on the market compared to where it is today, because now I'm meeting that market, if it continues to rise, he's going to be red on the sheet. If people see this as a big plus, that's where I'm going to kind of get off, on the get off the highway there, on the off ramp. Mitch, Tua or Darnold?
Tua. Can we move on to the next person? Because there's a take that I have with this, but it goes really well with Justin Fields.
All right. Well, for me, Tua and Penix, without a doubt, I'm taking over Sam Darnold.
Same.
Or for Bryce Young, I actually have them tiered together. We know how slippery that slope is for Bryce Young. And I know we had a little stretch there that people got excited about, but people were whistling a different tune, just a few weeks prior to that. And that goes to my point with Sam Darnold. Maybe you don't feel confident in starting him right away, but nobody was confident in starting Bryce Young at all last year. Right. So moving on here, because we could spend days and days and days on every one of these players. But Mitch, Justin Fields, KTC value quarterback 29. Frog in my throat. He goes to the New York Jets. 2 years, $40 million. How do you want to tie this into Sam Darnold?
Okay, so Scott and I had a video. You go back, look a couple hours ago on the live feed. It's up if anyone wants to hear our takes on Justin Fields. But I was saying how I believe Justin Fields is going to get hyped up by the underdog community, redraft community, because people are going to buy into that. And there was a little bit of pushback there. There were people saying, no, I don't believe he gets steamed up at all. And if that's the case, to answer the question, if I'm buying Fields in Dynasty, 100%. If his price isn't leaving the quarterback 25-ish tier, he's a guy that I could lock in that I want to start each week. We're talking about Tua, Penix, Darnold, Bryce, all of these guys that we don't really want to start. We're okay with them because of what our team composition is and how we're able to attack different positions. Justin Fields is a guy that I legit want to have in my starting lineups if possible. My worry, he's going to get steamed up to quarterback 20, quarterback 18, 19. Then all of a sudden that price point's going to be too high for me just with what I've seen from him previously.
Dan, does the rushing upside for Justin Fields get you excited here? I mean, we all know the cult of Justin Fields every single year. And we talk about excuses. This is a guy that always has excuses from people, and he always has that market.
The cult of Justin Fields scares me, so I'm going to be very careful of what I say because I know the YouTube chat will blow up afterwards. And when we get to closing thoughts tonight, I will address the 2027 first conversation.
Get your pitchforks. Come on.
Took some slack for, but I'm a little sad today because like my Garrett Wilson hope just I felt like it declined. We didn't see George Pickens get unlocked until the Steelers went from Fields to Russ, and Russ wasn't even, necessarily the answer. We haven't seen Fields put together a full season anywhere really where it's like, hey, this is going to be our guy next year. It always ends up being a platoon or like they tailor the offense. And, I'm hopeful for Aaron Glenn there coaching with the Jets that he could put a good strategy together. And I think they'll squeeze as much as they could out of Justin Fields. But I really see this as a filler. Oh man, that rushing upside, again, he's just in that category of the Darnolds and the Genos and the Carrs where, again, that rushing upside is a lot more attractive from a week-to-week fantasy perspective where maybe for this year I'd rather have him than obviously a Derek Carr who I don't feel too good about, or maybe Geno, I'm not sure. Darnold if he doesn't get any weapons. But outside of that, guys, I'd rather the upside and the long-term dynasty potential of any guy before him or someone that's just going to definitely help me win now.
Mitch, when did you pull this for the graphic of quarterback 29? Was that this morning?
It was this morning. Yeah. So it's probably changed already.
Or I guess whenever the news broke. So, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Right now he's up to 27. Yeah.
That was my point. We're already seeing, and again, like you look on there and it's within, just a few points, if you will. But I really believe, especially on Fantasy Calc, I know we're just using KTC as a very quick barometer, but on Fantasy Calc, once real trades start going through, we're going to get people buying back in on Justin Fields. And I think his price is going to be elevated to the point that it's going to be one that I'm not interested in. So right now on my tiers, I have Justin Fields in 12-team Superflex leagues at 204. And I know there's going to be people saying that's too high. There's going to be people screaming from the mountaintops that's far too low, right? Justin Fields is one of those polarizing pieces. So when we're going through, Mitch, tell me where to stop. So who would you take Justin Fields over? And I'm not going to start at Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, but Trevor Lawrence. Cam Ward.
Oh, hold on. Just so you know, I would take him over Michael Penix, who was above both of them, just so you know.
Wait, you would take
Cam
Fields
Ward.
over Penix?
Yeah. There is a 1 year age difference there. 1 year. One of them is giving me elite fantasy upside. The other had one game of fantasy upside against the worst defense we've almost ever seen with the Panthers at the end of the year.
I don't get the Michael Penix hate.
I don't get the love. At best. But you pray he could have a year like Jared Goff has, right? That is our biggest hope, that he could have a year like the 2024 Jared Goff. What's Jared Goff's value right now?
Sorry, I'm waiting for the comments to come in to pick a side here. I'm baffled. I truly am.
Yeah,
because you think you know a guy, and then he starts doing stuff like this.
Let me ask you this, Mitch. Help me understand here. So I could get maybe the Penix hate. Now I don't hate him, but like maybe he's not a quarterback you're on, and there's a ton of guys you like more than them. Respect that. But when you talk Justin Fields, wouldn't like where I struggle with rather have him Penix is I believe Penix is going to be the Falcons quarterback for the next 5 to 10 years. I think Justin Fields is going to be a backup again in 1 to 2 years.
Dan, give me that crystal ball you have that looks out 10 years.
Now keep going, Dan.
Give me the crystal ball that looks out 5 years.
The potential. He was very poised last year. He was relaxed in the pocket. He's got weapons. There's no reason he shouldn't be their quarterback. I don't even care if he ends up being Derek Carr. Like Derek Carr at least had a starting job for 10 plus years. I could see that happening. I don't see that for Justin Fields beyond a year or two.
I completely agree. Like the odds are Justin Fields won't be a starter in 26 compared to the odds that Penix is a starter in 26. But I know in 2025, Justin Fields is going to be a better fantasy starter than what Penix could ever be. And it's not just by a little bit. This thing, I'm not talking about like one's going to score 13 points a game and one's going to score 15 points a game. One can score 25 points a game, and the other was ceiling is like 25 points a game, to where the other one has a very realistic chance of being quarterback 8 or better if he's able to start all year. So for me, it's just that upside, and it's so hard to get at the quarterback 25 price.
I want to get back to this conversation, but Najee Harris, 1 year up to $9.5 million for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, that's why I love being live. I was talking about this during the mock draft, but we have breaking news here. So I want to spend just a minute on it. And when I say just a minute, we're probably going to spend about 2.5 hours. But Najee Harris now is the third fantasy relevant running back to go off the board here in free agency. We got Aaron Jones, 2-year extension in Minnesota, Javonte Williams going to Dan's Dallas Cowboys, and now Najee Harris going to the Chargers. It truly does feel like a perfect fit, doesn't it? You have a smash mouth player in Najee Harris. He's durable. He doesn't miss time, and he goes into that system. We saw what J.K. Dobbins did there last year. We saw at little spurts what Gus Edwards did last year. And now you get Najee Harris, who is going to be running, in that Harbaugh system. Mitch, how high should Najee Harris be elevated? It's always tricky when you look at the running back position, But
Mhm.
coming into, well, right now, actually, on KTC, Najee Harris was a lowly, oh my gosh, where is he? Running back 32, 27 years old. The gentleman just had a birthday yesterday. Where do you see him?
So including the rookies coming in,
Correct.
maybe he gets up to running back 25. I mean, that's like a maybe he gets that high. But to me, he's still between 25 and 30, probably. I think that's fair. Like, I would take him for surely over Brian Robinson now. Someone who I would have taken Brian Robinson over him before this signing.
It's going to be interesting because I think his price is going to get elevated just because of the landing spot. But again, like Dan said, for Seattle, it's the same for all 32 teams, where we still have the rest of free agency. We have the NFL draft, where we have just an influx of high-end talent and depth at the running back position. So my cautionary tale would just be, don't overly invest in Najee Harris. I think he could have a very nice year. And again, when we look at the running back position, you look for, what are you doing for me right now? You know, we're not going to bust out Dan's crystal ball looking out 5 and 10 years, especially for the running back position. Little callback there. But like, is that 204 to 206 range fair? Do you think, Mitch?
I do. I think to get him off my roster, it would probably take more than that, but that's the price I'm wanting to pay. It's one of those, you want him, you're going to come pay for him, but if you want to trade him to me, I'll give you the 206.
Dan, Najee Harris or Isaiah Pacheco?
Najee Harris, definitely Najee Harris. I have Pacheco even before him signing today, after Najee.
Najee Harris or James Conner? Still Dan.
I have James Conner.
Travis Etienne. I know you love Etienne.
Lost my spot here. Najee higher.
And then Brian Robinson. Mitch already said he would take Najee over Brian Robinson.
Najee higher as well. And I'm with Mitch in his range. I have him like 26 to 28 in there. And I think what Najee signing with the Chargers gives you is, if you're in a startup draft and you're sliding a little running back, or you're looking for that next running back, and you land at Najee by default, you don't feel bad about it. You know he's going to help you, win this year with the Chargers. So,
Chuba or Najee Harris? Can I say Chuba smash?
Oh, I love Chuba. Yep, that's not cheap.
Yeah. So for me, John Paul, I like Chuba there. Anything else on Najee? Again, just a quick hitting breaking news. But again, my big takeaway, if anything, here is just, you want to invest that mid-second plus, okay. But in a 12-team super flex league, if he's elevating up to maybe like 201, I'm out. Is that fair?
If I could give up a wide receiver that's worth the 201, I could see myself doing that on a contending team if I need that running back depth. But I really don't want to give up that 201, 202, 203 for him, because I really like the prospects right there.
What about Josh Downs?
I would move Josh Downs for him. Yeah.
Dan, what about?
I'd rather Josh Downs, but the value of the position, if I needed that running back, I could understand that.
Okay. Going over to tight ends in 2 PPR. What about Jake Ferguson?
I'd rather Najee, and I'll figure out tight end.
Same.
Okay. All right. Moving on here.
Real quick, just one last thing, real fast on Najee. I wish it was longer than a 1-year deal. We talk about conviction, and we bust each other's chops a lot on this show. Like, when you look at that comparison to Chuba, Carolina took some conviction, locked him up for a couple of years. Even Aaron Jones got a 2-year deal today, the old man, I would have liked it to be more than 1 year for Najee.
Yeah. But again, like, maybe he goes out there, has a very stellar year, and then he's able to get another 2, maybe 3-year contract if he stays healthy.
Prove it deal.
Exactly. All right. DK Metcalf, not a free agent move, but traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 2nd-round pick, gets the big extension. KTC wide receiver 22. Mitch, can he maintain his value? playing for my Pittsburgh Steelers. Who's going to throw him the ball? We don't know. But can he maintain that value?
Yeah, you're Pittsburgh Steelers. It's exactly when I think the Steelers, I think John Bauer. Here's my thing. Right now, as the team stands, no. I don't think there's a chance he does. But I actually DM'd you after Scott and I did our last video on Metcalf. I don't believe Pickens is going to be on the team come September.
Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
my guess.
Yeah. I mean, the way that he is personality wise, I have a really hard time seeing him being like, you know what, I'm okay being the wide receiver too. This guy got paid the contract that I want. I can't do it. So right now, if they walk on the field with Pickens and Metcalf week 1, I don't love either of them. I don't want to start either of them. But I do think there's a strong chance that Metcalf is the guy after they move on from Pickens. And at that point, then yes, I'm still all about Metcalf at that point.
Because let's think about this. What if they move on from Pickens? I just flashed John Paul's comment up there, and it's so true. That dynamic between DK and Pickens. And I was seeing all these things like a cornerback in the NFC or the AFC North breathes the wrong way. And then DK and Pickens are all over them. Like, let's say they move on from Pickens. Rodgers comes in. I know it's not like the Rodgers of old, but look at what he was able to do, force feeding Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson still last year.
No.
And now if you remove Pickens, I know it's an Arthur Smith offense, but you're not, unless something changes here over the rest of free agency. And I'm interested to see the dynamic with running backs. We mentioned Najee Harris was only the 3rd running back of note, really. No disrespect to my guy Samaje Perine, but I think a lot of these running backs at this point might sit and wait because the way the rookies coming in. But Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, Jordan Mason, like I think those guys are just going to sit. And it would be interesting. I'd be interested to know if the Chargers even explored extending J.K. Dobbins or how that went. But Dan, how do you see this playing out?
You know, there's certain situations of fantasy that we used to always like that are really losing their luster. One is the Steelers offense, another is the Chiefs offense, and another is that Bills passing game. But specific to your question here with DK Metcalf, you know, I just think there's limitations with him. You know, we saw it last year in Seattle. I don't see how it gets better with Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think he'll have some moments. He's a freak athlete. You know, he'll occasionally break one. You know, he's okay. But I think we're not looking for okay in Dynasty. You know, we're looking for that number 1 alpha receiver, and he just doesn't feel like that anymore. So I don't know, man. I'm not on DK where I was in the past. I'd rather get a Tet McMillan come out of that draft, or you know, there's some other receivers I'd rather have. You know, whatever happens with Pickens, to Mitch's point, you know, I don't know if Pittsburgh needs weapons, so I think they're going to try to make Pickens work. But boy, man, social media has been fun the last couple of days with Pickens and Metcalf together on that same team. If things don't go well in Pittsburgh, good luck with that, Coach Tomlin.
Mitch, and then everybody in the chat, drop who you'd like in these either or situations. DK Metcalf or DJ Moore?
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, baby. Go Bears.
DK Metcalf or Xavier Worthy?
Xavier Worthy.
I'll take DK Metcalf. At least he's staying out of trouble.
DK Metcalf or Emeka Egbuka? And you got not a pick. You got to take the player today.
Egbuka.
Yeah, I'll roll the dice with Mitch.
Jalen Waddle?
Man, just made out of glass.
That one's close. Yeah.
I'll give the edge to Metcalf.
Chris Olave?
Olave smash.
Jameson Williams.
Wait, did you just say Waddle is made of glass? And then he said,
I know. I'm hoping this is the year he stays healthy.
Careful when you say smash and Olave in the same sentence. It's not, we don't like that.
I still have that near elite ceiling for Olave. I'm hoping.
All right. So is it fair to say wide receiver 28-ish when the dust settles, if
probably.
George Pickens stays. But now think about it. Let's say it's Daniel Jones trotting into Pittsburgh as the quarterback, and Pickens is still there. I think we're going to see even more of a downward trend there. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And this is, Scott, Shane, they always talk about making their bets. Make your bet. Where do you stand today? If you are of the way you look at this, you're thinking, hey, quarterback situation's murky. I don't think they move on from George Pickens. They're an Arthur Smith-led offense. His value is going to continue to fall. Now's the time to cash out. And I don't necessarily know if you can get that wide receiver 22 price tag, but I sure as hell would be looking to find out if that's the way you're leaning. So, that's kind of the price tag we're looking at in terms of the veteran receivers, but also throwing a rookie in there. I think this is an underrated dynasty, just redraft, whatever scenario you want to look at it. But Aaron Jones, all the way down there at KTC, running back 43. Will he maintain his running back 20 point per game pace at age 30? Like, Minnesota liked him enough to invest 2 more years in him.
Yes.
And, coming in, we talked about the strength of this class, the rookies. There are a lot of opportunities there. And I still think they do draft somebody. But Aaron was like, this is a really nice situation for him. And again, I'm not saying go out there and elevating his price to, 201, 202, 203. But I think a mid-second in 12-team super flex formats, and I don't necessarily think that you need to pay that, and especially because, maybe wait and see how things play out in the NFL draft. It's always more of a risk to go out and acquire these running backs, certainly, whenever there's still a lot more pieces to the puzzle that have to fall into place. But Dan, Aaron Jones, what are your thoughts here from a dynasty perspective?
I think if he's on my roster, today's news made me happy. Outside of that, he's not on any of my rosters. I will not be acquiring him. A mid-second JB. I mean, I could see your point if you're really, really running back needy, but I'd rather that mid-second by a lot. Now, if it's late in the year and Minnesota's rolling and he's healthy at that time, and you need a running back as a contender, maybe then I'd consider trading a second. But man, he's still 31 years old. A 2-year deal, they could get out of it after one. The money is guaranteed. It's guaranteed. I don't want to invest in a 31-year-old running back. That's not
I get it.
A Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry freak athlete type. And he has had his little injuries here and there. But again, it's good news. Good news for Aaron Jones owners. I think he's going to be a productive fantasy player this year. But for Dynasty, it's about as good as I could compliment him.
But, and again, this is the price tag that we were talking about. Jalen Wright, Jalen Warren, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Braylon Allen, Ramondre Stevenson. Like, how high do we need to go here, Mitch? Because I'm still certainly higher than that. Like, I'm taking Aaron Jones over Isaiah Pacheco.
Oh, same.
And then it starts to get interesting right when we get around that James
I would
Conner
say really
territory.
close to Tony Pollard.
Hold on. Dan's giving me a timeout.
We need a timeout. So I think, like, JB, I get, like, maybe today, hey, do you take him over Pacheco? Maybe
100%.
over Ramondre. But, like, New England's going to be different now with Coach Vrabel. They're going to get back to their tough ways. They're getting some O-line and D-line. I think this could be a Ramondre potential bounce back, maybe. I think, is Pacheco just, he came back off of a very serious injury. You give him a whole offseason to rebound, rehab, get right. If Kansas City says Pacheco's our guy, I think I'd rather the younger Pacheco than
And I don't know
Jones.
they say that.
But we
They
don't know
brought
that
in-
yet. To your point, we don't know that yet.
They brought in Elijah Mitchell here, and I'm not going to sit here and say Pacheco's better than Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, I don't disagree today. I would just say don't be in a hurry to make those moves if I'm a dynasty owner, because you might regret it a month from now, 2 months from now, when one of these guys that we're talking about putting him above today are 5 years younger and could bounce back and have a good season. And in Dynasty, man, that's a big difference.
Again, give me 2 impactful seasons from especially a running back over 4 to 5 years of mediocrity.
Aaron Jones had 300 touches last season. He had 50 catches. I mean, 300 total touches, including those 50 catches, right? The dude smashed at age 29. I didn't see any slowdown. He's in an offense that we absolutely love. Like, we love that offense. We love everything that does for the running game, for the passing game. JJ McCarthy, I think they're going to have to lean on Aaron Jones even more. I think if they go out and draft one in the 3rd and 4th round, yeah, that's going to affect his value. But at the same time, what are we really having to pay to get Aaron Jones on our team right now? It's a late 2nd round pick. A 3rd probably doesn't get him on there. So you're looking at a late 2nd. So you're looking, would you rather have him or Devin Neal is kind of the range we're looking at if you look at mock drafts, right? For me, if I'm contending, I want Aaron Jones. And I know that's not how we play Dynasty. We play the value game. We slowly build up, yada, yada, yada. It's very hard to find backs that touch the ball 300 times in a season. And so that makes me just like Aaron Jones because that is in his wheelhouse. Devin Neal might touch the ball 50 times, might touch it 250 times going into next year, right? We don't have a good idea right now. And that's for any back in that range, well, whether it's Ollie Gordon, Cam, Scattaboo, whoever you want to say, it's really hard to line them in. You know what? They're going to get 200 touches this year.
And I see a lot of comments in the chat about him falling off, especially because of his age.
He could.
That's the running back position, though. It's a volatile position. And the way I build a lot of my Dynasty rosters personally, it's not with those Bijan Robinsons. It's not with the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Devon Achane, the Breece Halls. It's with those older backs, the David Montgomerys, the Joe Mixons, the Aaron Jones, James Conner, those types of guys. And you're looking at value elsewhere. But again, like there's a lot of risk with a player like Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. So it's silly to sit there and hype him up, but not also take into account that risk. So certainly acknowledging that. Dan, Javonte Williams or Elijah Mitchell, and I know we're going to get into Javonte here shortly, but I see Mr. Bakes a lot question there.
I'm definitely Javonte Williams over Elijah Mitchell, not just because he's a Cowboy. Elijah Mitchell's kind of been quiet for a bit. I know he's a speed back that Kansas City signed, but I'm just kind of thinking that's a depth piece. They let Samaje Perine go. He's a good handcuff back. Right now in Dallas, I think Javonte Williams was signed with an expectation to have a large role, a guy that's going to, at a minimum, replace Rico Dotto. I'm really hoping Dallas does draft still a running back in the 1st or 2nd round, who I anticipate would ultimately be the guy. And watching the Denver games last year, which I did watch a lot, trying to figure out their running back situation, he still is a really good receiving back. Like when they wanted to throw, they would find him and he would catch the ball. He went through like little streaks running the ball. The media, they got on him a little bit, and then you'd see him run harder, and he had some flashes. So I just think a new change of scenery, getting away from a Coach Payton 4 running back offense, whatever it was last year, which was a nightmare for fantasy, is going to fit good in Dallas. And I think he's going to be a member of that 1-2 running back committee. We just got to figure out who that number 1's probably going to be. But Dallas is placing a heavy emphasis on run the ball. So I think it's a good fit. Give me the PPR.
While we're here, let's just get into Javonte. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had the 1-year, $3 million deal in Dallas. KTC running back 50. Mitch, I think it's safe to say we're going to see his value and price tag rise a little bit. And that's just the nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. When anything changes in Dynasty Fantasy Football, people get excited. And a lot of these players, we're going to see a little bit of a value bump. Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Aaron Jones. I think it's going to happen with the 2 other guys we talk about with Chris Godwin, Davante Adams. Chris Godwin, just because of getting that contract. The only player on our list tonight that I think is going to lose a little bit of value is DK Metcalf, but that's what happens typically when you come to Pittsburgh. So Javonte Williams, Mitch, Javonte or Ray Davis? Javante or Javante's below Isaac Orendo.
Yeah.
Like you, Javante or Blake Corum?
Javante.
Same.
Javante or Jalen Wright?
Javante.
Dan, I see you just nodding along.
Yeah, 'cause I think he bumps ahead of those kind of just depth running back pieces that you're mentioning, JB. He just doesn't jump high enough to, get in those bigger name conversation, at least not now.
Now, from a pick perspective, and let me know what you guys think, I'm still more than happy taking 209, 210 for him in a 12-team super flex tight end premium format. Dan, that might be a tough pill for you to swallow, being the big Cowboys fan. I kind of say one of my favorite things in the comments after episodes now is people just straight up bashing your fandom. And I know that you might not feel the same way, but I like it.
It is comical, and that is just the wide array of teams. So we've definitely had a lot of humor there by our listeners, but JB, no challenge flags to your 209, range there for Javante. I am a Cowboys fan though, so if anyone wants to trade me their Javante Williams shares, I'll definitely buy for potentially a late second. I like John Paul Taylor's comment there in the chat. Could be a little J.K. Dobbins renaissance. I could see something like that. Dobbins might have had a little bit larger role in the Chargers, so I don't know if we'll get quite up to that Javante Williams. But as far as at least having some fantasy value on our rosters and getting those catches, I could see that.
And Dan, I'm going to say I'm not so sure that Dallas goes out and drafts a running back, to be honest. They were more than happy to go in the season last year with Rico Dowdle as their number one guy. And now they have a better complement behind him with Javante. And if that's the case, come August, everyone's going to be like, well, I'm willing to pay, a mid-second to try to get Javante. So I think right now, if you kind of like him and you like the landing spot, go and toss some early thirds and just see what happens. I bet a few of those get accepted because some people are going to be like, oh, you know what? Dallas is going to go out and draft a running back in the first 2 rounds and he's going to get buried. It's a shot you could take for a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, Mitch,
do you think it's too tough right now, even like an early 3rd, to get somebody excited that was holding Javante and now seemingly he's
I don't think anyone was excited to hold Javante is my only take.
Okay. No, and that's fair. That's fair. And last thing on Javante, Dan, do you think there are any concerns with the offensive line not being the caliber that we're so used to seeing when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys?
I don't want to. I want to try not to be like just a glass half full person, but their O-line, like Zach Martin retired, and that is a big deal. But last year they actually ran the ball better when Zach Martin was hurt and out of the game. It's like injuries really took him over last year. And Brock Hoffman came in at right guard and played very well. Their left guard Tyler Smith is all pro. Their left tackle and center were both rookies last year and did pretty well. So I think there's an expectation in Dallas that they take the next step, those rookie linemen. Terrence Steele at right tackle is solid. And I just think this new O-line run blocking scheme, they plan to pound the ball a little bit more. It could be friendly. So I'm not really worried about it, JB. Mitch is probably my, voice of reason there of, hey, Dallas might not draft a running back. I really pray that's not the case. But who's to say this ownership group has smartened up and they have a different philosophy all of a sudden about the running back position. They could sign another running back free agent too and go in just with 2 vets and then decide to invest their draft capital in other positions because they do have more needs. So I don't want to put all my eggs in a basket there. And if they didn't, maybe Javante does have a more of a really J.K. Dobbins higher ceiling, and he's still only in his 25 years old. He's still pretty young.
Let me ask the question, and then there's a reason I'm asking. Mitch, what if I know the price tag seemingly is a little bit too high, apparently, for Rico Dowdle, but let's say they bring Rico Dowdle back. There's not much of a mark, and he's like, okay. Do you think that would negatively impact Javante Williams' market value?
Yeah, I think there's enough doubt there that I think any running back coming in could affect it quite a bit, to be honest.
And at that point, do you remember several years ago, whenever the Chiefs brought in Shady McCoy? and your comment, and again, I'm psychotic and I remember these random things, but you said if a player like McCoy is coming in and they drop the value of that running back, should we have liked that running back to begin with? And it's like the litmus test, right?
It was my Carlos Hyde rule. If Carlos Hyde joins your team and it ruins a running back's value, the running back didn't have real value in the first place.
And honestly, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind whenever you get to those lower tier. And this was Carlos Hyde later in his career. Let's not knock on Carlos early in his career. A few more plays to get through. Hey, the chat has been fantastic so far. Make sure you hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel. A lot of great content, pretty much a new video every single day. And then, like I said, Mitch, Scott, Shane, Ray, absolutely killing it with the breaking news stuff that they've been throwing out there. Oh my, Chris Godwin. Best case scenario for him, is that fair?
Yes.
Stay put. It shows that Tampa Bay not overly concerned with the injury. I know a lot of folks are saying that it kind of took a team-friendly deal, $22 million, whenever you look at these other guys that are getting paid. But Dan, what do you want with the flag?
I have to chat. This just hit me out of nowhere. For Mitch Sorensen to say that this is the best scenario when the other rumor was going to the Patriots with his boy Drake May, but he agreed with you. JB, you could say it, JB. JB, you go either way, and you're right here. Mitch cannot say this is the best scenario when he is the almighty Drake May truther.
Let me be honest. I didn't hear that even once, so I didn't know that was a possibility.
They said he left $20 million on the table, and New England was heavily pursuing him. So that's fair, Mitch. I would like him more on the Patriots. That's true. Thank you.
I stand corrected.
Continue, JB. Continue. I'll put my flag back in my pocket.
Somebody would. I mean, we talk about the Trinity tool over there at ddfantasyfootball.com. Use code Theory, get 50% off your first month. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But Chris Godwin was fantastic.
Yes.
Prior to injury, like
he was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver.
He might have been.
He was really 9 to be technical.
Oh, was he 9? Okay.
By the end of the year, points per game wise, he was 9th.
So, like, I see the comment from Dr. B. Harris. I now want to keep my Godwin shares instead of selling them. I'm on board, but again, I think this elevates his price as well. Like, again, there are alternate universes where he signs a 1-year deal elsewhere. He signs a 2-year deal elsewhere. And the situation's not as good. We always want to get excited about free agent wide receivers landing on a new team. And we just think, Dan, just not long ago, you said glass half full. That's the way people approach these situations. And I truly think it is best case for him to stay tied to Tampa Bay and a Baker Mayfield. And I see the comment about Jalen McMillan. We'll get to him in a second because there certainly are trickle-down effects here. But Dan, besides the flag, do you like this for Chris Godwin? And are you willing to go out and acquire? And we'll talk about some price points.
I definitely like it for Chris Godwin. I like Chris Godwin. I think we should all be encouraged that the Bucs medical team had to give the green light. We know there's an injury history there. He had a serious injury last year, but for them to put 3 years, $66 million into him, that says, hey, his health's going to be okay. These are the remaining best years of Chris Godwin's career, probably. He's in his prime. This is 29 to 31 here. And then I think it's a big plus for Baker. Baker retains another weapon. Maybe it does dash some of those McMillan hopes, but I think Baker's been able to support kind of 3 receivers in that offense. I mean, Godwin or Evans is going to get dinged up from time to time, and I think McMillan is still ascending a bit. Kate Otten had some flashes last year. I think this is just a good Tampa Bay offense. Bucky Irvin ascended. Now we got some changes at OC, so we'll see if things could keep rolling. But definitely good for Chris Godwin. Am I acquiring him though, JB? The price would really have to be right because he's still a receiver that's hitting that 30-year mark in Dynasty. So I'd be a little careful.
Dan, let me ask: Ricky Pearsall or Chris Godwin?
I would go Godwin because I do want to win now, and I think there's just a lot more explosive production with Baker Mayfield, so it would be Godwin. But I'm not giving up no like first round picks to get Godwin or anything like that.
Hold on.
No late
line
first,
that one
leaving.
up. That was like on a tee for you,
Hold
John.
on.
Do you appreciate that?
Dan, let me question you really quick. You would take Godwin over Ricky Pearsall, but just a week ago, you said you would trade a 27 first for Ricky Pearsall. You said you would trade 111 for Ricky Pearsall. So which is it?
I would be.
Gotcha.
Well, Ricky's young in Dynasty, so I know I've kind of scaled back a little bit on the Pearsall there. I'm a little over ambitious, but it's still a buy now time for Ricky Pearsall. I just think opportunities there. The Niners believe in him. That's why Debo's gone. I like the kid a lot, but I probably would have been better saying early first than late second or late first.
All right. Taylor, I'm in that boat. Mitch is in several leagues with me where he saw me do this. I Chris Godwin, I was looking to unload, maybe solidify some depth, whatever the case may be. There's no return policy, unfortunately.
You gave me a lot of Godwin at the end of last year.
I would like to invoke that return policy clause. I need to check my league bylaws because I certainly, and I'm still over 15% exposure, I believe. But I would like to be more now based on where we are. Obviously, things have changed since you're making a push for a championship. And I think one league, I even moved him for Demario Douglas, and I want to have that one back. So Chris Godwin, Mitch. Chris Godwin or Jaden Reed?
Chris Godwin.
Dan, yep. You're on mute.
Because of that Green Bay situation, Chris Godwin.
Again, I say it at least once an episode. Do you see why I'm always on edge?
It's because you can't ever put yourself on mute because you never mute.
He never stops talking. That's correct.
Exactly. Like there's no hesitation there.
I was being a good listener. So was Mitch earlier.
Yeah, I think good listener. I think you too. Brandon Ayuk or Chris Godwin, Mitch?
Brandon Ayuk. But that one is so close for me. I could buy into Ayuk a little bit.
I will take Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I knew you would.
So I have to take anyone?
Trenton, get out of here. Got him.
Fair.
Dan, Godwin or Ayuk?
I'll go Ayuk.
And then let's go Godwin.
Oh, man, that one's tough. I almost want to go back to Godwin.
Isn't it? It's so painful.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to have a lot of people like that's probably a decision that folks are going to have to make, whether it's a trade in existing leagues, whether it's a startup that people are taking part in. So I think that's fair right there. Godwin or Najee Harris?
Godwin.
As long as we're starting three receivers, Godwin.
Godwin or Davante Smith from John Paul?
Davante Smith.
Davante.
I will also go Davante Smith, but I'll say if I could get like a late second and then kick back a late third, maybe. So like it's like I have them separated by one tier at this point.
Yeah. There's enough of an age discount there with Smith that I'm going in that direction for sure.
Tyson isn't having it. Davante, come on now. But no, like that's the point. We always say like the point of these exercises, you go through whenever situations change, or obviously he's staying in Tampa Bay, he being Chris Godwin, like there are going to be changes in value. So being able to get out ahead of these situations and figuring out where you draw the line, I think it's a valuable exercise. Last one on Chris Godwin or all right, Mitch, Chris Godwin or Chuba Hubbard?
Chris Godwin.
Godwin. Close.
And I
It's
asked him
extremely
because
close. Yeah.
those are two guys I have tiered together right now. And if you look on KTC, I think that's where Godwin's going to start to, creep up to right around there.
Mhm.
Let's see. Let's catch up on some of the comments here. Both are wide receiver twos behind AJ and Evans. I think Godwin Ayuk is the perfect move. Ayuk will only gain value closer and closer he returns. But asterisk, my only counterpoint would be, is Brandon Ayuk, does he remain a San Francisco 49er? I know there was all the smoke last year and there's smoke this year. And honestly, I'm tired hearing about Brandon Ayuk, but I could see that. I could certainly see that. All right, last player,
Mhm.
Davante Adams, Los Angeles Rams, 2 years, $46 million. The guy can still play. He was peppered by his best bud, Aaron Rodgers, there in New York. The dude was putting up fantasy points. So you talk about pieces that you're looking to go out and get as a contender, like Mitch was talking about Justin Fields with the, very, short outlook, but with that ceiling on a weekly basis. Aaron Jones as an old veteran running back that can help a contender. Davante Adams, like wide receiver 48 on KTC. I think that's going to jump up into the 20s, honestly.
Mhm.
As old as he is, as crazy as that may sound, he goes into a perfect situation where he's going to be able to eat. Puka Nacua is still going to be able to eat. Mitch, you talked about Puka just a few weeks ago on players that you're looking to acquire now. If anything, I think this makes Puka Nacua more attainable. And it sounds like, unless a trade happens, Cooper Kupp is in fact going to be dropped by the Los Angeles Rams. So all in all, I think this is a great move for Adams, Puka, Stafford. Dan, is Davante Adams worth a late first in, again, let's assume 12-team super flex, 1.75 PPR for tight ends?
Is he worth it?
This isn't a gotcha moment for Ricky
No,
Pearsall again.
Yeah. Is he worth it? Probably based on production. Do I want to give up my late first for Davante Adams? Just no, because he's 32.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I would just try to figure it out a different way if I could, and not have to.
It's really so hard because you're not going to get him for a mid-second, right? Or if you do, that's in October when the other team's given up and they're just looking to sell assets.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that in June is going to be extremely hard to do. And so his value is at a late first. Can I pay that value? Absolutely not. I would rather add 2 firsts onto the late first and go get Puka. But if you have Adams now, dude, Stafford is going to have an amazing year. They're 100%. They look at this. They have a 2-year window. Let's go for it. And Matthew Stafford is the elite quarterback that makes all the fantasy players around him better. So I love Stafford. I love Puka. I love Adams. Kyron to the moon. This helps out Kyron so much because they will never put 8 in the box ever. They can't. They literally can't put that many players in the box because then Adams will go for 60 yards or Puka will go for 60 yards. So in my opinion, this offense is one I definitely want to buy into. Just at that late first, I won't give up my pick, but maybe I could do something else in that range.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of runs parallel to the conversation we had with Aaron Jones. Tim's comment, I just get Julio Jones flashbacks when the age cliff hits. It hits fast.
Julio had the foot issues, though. That was always his problem. Yeah.
Davante Adams is just a specimen. He's kind of in that, Jerry Rice played till he was 42. Now, obviously, his production tailed off late in those years, but he was able to just play longer than the average receiver that the cliff drops off. 1, because he was so good, and 2, because it was just physical ability. And Davante Adams is that guy. He looked really good last year, and he really did get the perfect landing spot for a 32-year-old future Hall of Famer that just has a little more gas in his tank than the average 32-year-old wide receiver. So all in, like Mitch said. I really hope that Rams team stays healthy because they're going to be really fun to watch if they do.
All right. So Davante Adams, and again, wide receiver 48 on the screen here, already up to wide receiver 47. A lot of movement, going up that one spot. Davante Adams or Michael Pittman, Mitch?
Davante Adams.
I have these guys right next to each other in my rankings, literally right next to each other. But man, that Colts situation. Give me Adams.
Agree. Keon Coleman.
Adams.
I remember when I once liked Keon Coleman. That was a cute time in my life. I tried
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek.
Jaden Reed.
Davante.
Let me just say this because we brought up Jaden Reed a couple of times tonight. If they would just use him in 2 wide receiver sets and make him a focal part of the offense, he'd be a smash on all these. But they don't, so it would be Davante Adams.
Cross positionally here. Davante Adams or taking a sec here. David Njoku in 1.75 PPR for tight ends.
They don't.
That's JB's boy.
They don't have a quarterback. I mean,
they traded for Kenny Pickett.
I know. They're probably going to end up with Cam Ward. Now, I can't do it. Yeah, or should.
I'm Davante Adams. I'll figure out the tight end like I did Fergs before.
Taylor drops a comment here, and I kid you not, man. I was eyeing up Jalen McMillan on here, and I was like, it's not going to be McMillan for Adams, especially with Godwin re-signing. So same wavelength here.
Yep.
Jalen McMillan in a late second.
Or is that Tet McMillan?
No, it's not Tet McMillan. Jalen McMillan.
There's a big difference.
There is.
I don't want Jalen. That doesn't even entice me. That's an Adams smash to me. But if you say Tet McMillan, let's go. Just Tet for Adams, 1 for 1.
No, it is not. It is not Tet.
It should be. We're talking a wide receiver 3 in a late second. That's not moving the needle, boys.
I'm speechless right now.
And I like the kid's talent, but.
Well, now we know if Dan has Davante Adams, he's expecting Tet McMillan and a late second for him. No, but I think that's a good one there. Adams or Downs?
I want to like Downs. I really do. It's Adams.
I'm a Downs guy. Mitch and I just had a fun trade that involved them. So, but Downs is a very interesting guy this year. I like it. I'm going to gamble on him.
Just in a bubble, no other context can be Davante Adams.
Yeah. I
truly just think he, if he's on the field, he's going to smash with the Rams.
Right.
He is.
This, I think, is one of those situations. I mentioned it earlier where we always have those high expectations for these receivers that switch teams. And I mean, honestly, I'm being a little hypocritical because I said it doesn't always come to fruition. But I truly believe just with that situation, stepping in with Matthew Stafford, you have obviously a very solid veteran presence at quarterback. Yeah, I think Davante is just going to have a tremendous year here. Kind of catching up on the chat here. But anything else, guys? I mean, obviously there were some other signings. There were other things happening. But of note from a dynasty perspective, this feels about right. Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, DK Metcalf, Aaron Jones, Chris Godwin, Davante Adams, Javonte Williams, and then the breaking news on the Najee Harris 1-year contract there for the Chargers. And I mentioned the videos that Mitch and Scott and the team, they put out on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. I know even Mike Gesicki was covered. Zach Ertz was covered. Shane jumped on to talk about him. Like that's kind of the depth, if you will, of the players that are being discussed in the dynasty impact. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel because there's a ton more content coming. Mitch, Are you off tomorrow?
I sure am. I'm off through Thursday. So yeah, tomorrow and Wednesday we'll be throwing
Nice.
up a lot more live feeds and all
There
that
you
good
go.
stuff.
And I will be tuning
Awesome.
in at my desk in the office. So Dan, for the oh gosh, we didn't put the episode number. Is this 282?
It's 282. Yep.
For the 282nd time here on Dynasty Theory. Dan, final thoughts. What do you got for our listeners?
Hey, first for just Mitch, Dan Skipper re-signed tonight as a Lions fan. I'm sure
Ooh,
you're happy
we
to
go.
hear that. Skip is back. Final thing for listeners. So we had a lot of fun. We've been having a lot of fun in our chat and YouTube. And I'm normally a day or two late because of my work schedules. JB normally gives most of the comments and has a lot of fun on there. But I know I took some heat for saying, hey, a 27 first has the value of a third round pick. So let me elaborate here a little bit on that. Okay. Because everybody and their mom sent me, I swear to God, offers for my 27 firsts. And they thought they were being generous, given like early mid seconds. There were some not so generous as well. But I don't want other teams' 27 firsts. I would prefer to keep my current picks or players because I want to win now. So like when I see a 27 first, yeah, like it just doesn't excite me being a few years down the road. So when we were evaluating those trades an episode ago, I'm thinking I want the other side because that is how I feel about a 27 first today. It just doesn't have that value. I want to win now. I want production in the next couple of years. And then like I will often trade 26 firsts right now. I don't mind paying next year's league fees to go all in on a league, this year. I might really need that 27 first if my decisions don't pan out. So I really don't want to move it that far ahead. And then when I see other teams trade their 27 first in our leagues, I really hope we have a solid league and solid commissioner too, because I really worry about teams just crushing their teams and then no one wants them, even though they might have even paid for it. They left the team in shambles. So I don't like going down that 27 path. So just a little, clarity on how I feel about that pick.
Dan, we talked about pitchforks earlier in the episode. People were out. They wanted your head on a platter, man. And you know what? I was egging them on. I was.
Of course
poking.
you were. Of course.
I was poking. Again, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Mitch, for the 282nd time, what do you got? Final thoughts.
So this whole week, get in the Discord, join the Heisman chat. I was in there, Scott was in there, Shane was in there, Ray was in there all day. Like, no joke, there's 40 people in there talking the whole time about free agency, how it's affecting players. And I don't think I know everything. Ray doesn't think he knows everything. Same thing with Scott. But when you get so many people in there bouncing ideas off, this is what I think, this is what I think, it really helps make your decisions. And it's just such a good community. So use Code Theory, join up, try it out. I guarantee once you join it and once you're in it, you're not going to leave.
And that's the thing too. We talk about the different exercises we do. You're not always going to agree, certainly, with everybody's takes. But if it gets the wheels spinning, if it creates ideas, I think that's the main takeaway and the biggest advantage to being part of the DD fantasy football community. But anyway, again, the chat, absolutely fantastic. I know there's some things that we didn't touch on that people commented on, but again, we are in the Discord 24/7. We do sleep occasionally, rarely, but we do. So jump in, check it out. Have a lot of great conversations. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week. Peace.